As relations between India and Bangladesh continue to sour, an old friend to both countries has now weighed in. The Russian ambassador to Bangladesh, Alexander Grigorievich Kozin, has urged Dhaka to de-escalate tensions with New Delhi. There have been a number of diplomatic escalations, remember, by Bangladesh in the recent days. The latest happened today. The Indian High Commissioner in Dhaka was summoned. He was called because Dhaka wanted to convey quote-unquote grave concern over the recent protests outside Bangladesh's diplomatic and consular facilities in India. Meanwhile, remember, protests have been taking place across India over the recent lynching of a minority Hindu man in Bangladesh named Deepu Chandra Das. He was killed on the 18th of December following accusations of blasphemy. India has maintained that it has kept the Bangladeshi diplomatic facilities safe as required by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. It is amid this tense backdrop that the Russian ambassador made his remark. At a press conference at the Russian embassy in Dhaka, Kozin said, and I quote, "The sooner you reduce the tension, the better, because historically, since 1971, when Bangladesh gained independence, it was mostly because of Indian help," unquote. He also reminded Bangladesh that Russia had played its part in its liberation and that India, Bangladesh and Russia should continue to work shoulder to shoulder. Let's tell you a bit of history now. India played an instrumental role in helping Bangladesh get its independence from Pakistan in 1971. In fact, between 1947 and 71, what is today known as Bangladesh was called East Pakistan. The people of East Pakistan suffered decades of repression and neglect from the authorities in Islamabad. Islamabad launched Operation Searchlight in March 1971, which led to mass killings and arrests in this particular region in East Pakistan. That is what ignited the Bangladeshi freedom struggle. And on the 3rd of December, Islamabad launched Operation Genghis Khan, targeting 11 Indian airfields. And this is when India decided to officially enter the war on the side of the Bangladeshi revolutionaries. But Pakistan was not without its own friends. The United States sent a part of its 7th Fleet, Task Force 74, to the Bay of Bengal. It was led by what was then the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise. The goal was to intimidate India. But the Americans weren't prepared to deal with India's old friend, the Soviet Union. New Delhi sent an urgent message to Moscow and asked for help dealing with the Americans. And the Soviets did come through. They dispatched nuclear-armed submarines and destroyers from Vladivostok in the Far East. The Russian fleet moved to intercept the Americans before they could reach India. The Russian submarines encircled the U.S. Naval Task Force and prevented the Americans from threatening India. And thus, India could continue to help the Bangladeshi revolutionaries. And eventually, this led to victory just days later. All right, let's get you more on this. I'm joined by Major General Ashok K. Mehta. He's an army veteran. In fact, he joins us as a defense and strategic affairs expert. He's joining us from New Delhi. General Mehta, good evening. Thank you very much for speaking with us on WION. You're somebody who's also a 1971 war veteran, and therefore it is only fitting for me to ask you and help you make our viewers understand what was the role of the Indian Army and the Soviet Union, now Russia of course, in the liberation of Bangladesh, something that the current regime of Bangladesh wants to erase.
Well, this should take us back to August 1971, when India signed the Treaty of Peace, Friendship and Cooperation with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had made a draft of this treaty much earlier, but Indira Gandhi was reluctant to enter even into a treaty, leave alone an alliance. But since the war was imminent and inevitable, this treaty had to be signed. As it is, India was heavily dependent on the Soviet Union for about 80 to 90% of its military equipment. That today is in the region of 60 to 70%. But the relationship with the Soviet Union was extremely strong and intense. And but for the Soviet military and diplomatic help, the war would not have been won conclusively. It could have ended with cessation of hostilities or a ceasefire. The Soviet Union introduced three vital vetoes in the United Nations Security Council. Remember, at that time, there was no China, and
Yes.
therefore it was a bilateral between in the United Nations Security Council between the Americans on one side who proposed the resolution of a ceasefire on the 4th of December, on the 5th of December, on the 7th of December, and each time the Soviet Union vetoed this. Now, this is perhaps the first and the last instance where a veto shaped the outcome of a war, and it permitted India to extend the war fighting till it was able to force a surrender and complete capitulation of the
Okay.
Pakistan military. And this, of course, as we all know, resulted in the creation of Bangladesh. So
Right.
this is historic, and the Russian ambassador, I think, very timely reminds the Yunus government of
Yes.
that role, the historic role of the Soviet Union, and of course, the Indian army, Indian military, which resulted in the surrender of 93,000 Pakistani prisoners of war.
And therefore, General Mehta, with the kind of role that the Indian Army and the Soviet Union played in the liberation of Bangladesh war, the current regime obviously doesn't want the world to remember it. They are making all-out efforts to not just erase the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, but also the role of Indian Army and the Soviet Union. And therefore, for veterans like you who've seen the 1971 war, what does it make you feel?
I wouldn't want to use the word ungrateful for the sacrifices of India and India's military. But this is geopolitics, unfortunately. And this is a time when the internal political situation in Bangladesh is at a point of a counter revolution. There have been many revolutions and counter revolutions in Bangladesh, what they are calling the Gen Z revolution, the
Yes.
students' protest, and the July Charter. So I think we have to factor that too. But certainly, the Bangladesh Mukti Bahini, the Mukti Jodhas, and all who took part in this joint war fighting should remember India's significant role in assisting Bangladesh in achieving its liberation from the atrocities of the oppressive Pakistani regime. So it's a bit surprising the behavior of the current, but there is no government. The situation is transitional, and where it will end up, one doesn't know. But the current situation certainly is hostile to India.
You know, it's interesting, General Mehta, because Bangladesh has never really seen smooth, peaceful transition in governance. And what we are seeing right now is more violent and chaotic than what we've seen in the past. But do you also think that the Russian hint is also towards America? You've got a Muhammad Yunus who thanked the United States and Bill Clinton when he had assumed power in Bangladesh for this regime change. And therefore, Russia is trying to hint the US as well that, look, here India and Soviet Union, or Russia as we know it now, has helped Bangladesh. So you make sure that you're alert. There are people who will make sure that the security threat that is coming in from Bangladesh at the moment will not be entertained.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's axiomatic. If you just look at the map of South Asia and the location of Bangladesh, Bangladesh is surrounded on all sides by India. So Bangladesh must also realize where it is on the map. But there is one other factor, and that is China. The
Yes.
Chinese have been particularly silent at the moment. There's a relationship between Pakistan, China, and Bangladesh, which is evolving. And the Chinese have a limitless, no limits partnership with Russia. So while Russia has indeed warned Bangladesh about its history, Bangladesh has also got to remember
Yes.
that the Americans and the Chinese are also factors in this geopolitical matrix.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We'll have to wait and watch, General Mehta, how this chaotic situation further proceeds in Bangladesh and the entire region. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your deep insights and experiences that you shared with us and our viewers on WION.